Welcome to episode 29 of Escape the Rat Race Radio. I'm your host, Christian Rodwell, and this is your ticket to escape the 9 to 5.
I think the most important point to understand is that why are you starting a company or a business in the first place? I hear people want to start a company or a business because they don't like their boss or they don't like the company they're in. And usually that's not always the right reason to start a company. And that's just an emotional reason for why they want to start a company or a business. What I always say to people is to consider, why are you starting a company for other people, your customers?
On this week's episode of Escape the Rat Race Radio, I'm very pleased to welcome entrepreneur, speaker and author, Mr. Ash Ali. Now, if the name Ash Ali isn't instantly familiar, then I'm sure that you will be familiar with the brand Just Eat. Their distinctive red stickers can be seen in restaurant windows, delivery bikes and delivery bags all over the UK. Well, it was Ash who was the marketing genius behind the rapid growth of this brand, which led to Just Eat achieving the largest tech IPO in London Stock Exchange history at a whopping £1.5 billion back in 2014. Now, as Ash will share with us very shortly, his entrepreneurial career began when he was just 15 years old, and it quickly led to him selling his first award-winning web business at the age of 19. Now, since then, Ash has acted as a mentor for numerous startups, earning the nickname The Growth Hacker, and he's always on the lookout for exciting and innovative companies to invest his money into. Now, I particularly wanted to invite Ash onto Escape the Rat Race Radio because I know that he can share with you some of the absolute fundamentals around starting a business. And if you listen carefully throughout this interview, you're going to learn proven steps which have been tried and tested by Ash when he sets about working on any new business ideas himself. So get your notebooks ready, because this is one interview you are not going to want to miss. Now, if you're serious about starting or accelerating your own business in 2018, then get ready. If ever the terms serial entrepreneur and growth hacker were designed for any one person specifically, then my money would be on Ash. Now, I must quickly apologize for the poor sound quality on my side during this interview. As some of you may have seen online, I've been testing both audio and video recording for the last couple of interviews, and unfortunately, the software has not been up to its usual high quality standards. But the most important thing is that Ash's wisdom and knowledge comes through loud and clear. And so with no further ado, let's head on over to my interview with the growth hacker himself, Mr. Ash Ali. Ash, welcome to Escape the Rat Race Radio today. It's a pleasure to have you on here. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, Chris, and you're welcome.
Yeah, and where in the world are you right now, Ash?
I'm currently in northwest London right now, in Colindale, in one of my offices here.
Fantastic. And it was earlier this year when we first met, and you were speaking at our mutual friend Junior Oganyemi's Entrepreneur Academy London. And that was a fantastic evening. And I've seen many of the speakers over previous months, but I must admit yours genuinely was my favorite presentation. You really just went straight in. There was no fluff. And you just really told it how it is. And there were a few really key points that I took away that evening. And I thought, you're definitely someone that I would love to have on the show. So it's a real pleasure to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much. You're welcome. And I love the feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So Ash, for those our listeners right now who maybe haven't had the pleasure of hearing you speak, would you mind just introducing yourself and a little bit about your background?
Sure. So my name is Ash Ali, and I started my career in the wonderful world of entrepreneurship at the age of 19 when I set up my first website, and I sold and moved to London. And then I started to work for other organizations and decided that I still wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I got involved in lots of startups, and I was the early employee and the first marketing director of a company called Just Eat, which is now on the stock market in the FTSE 100 and IPO'd for 1.5 billion. And it was an amazing journey there we went through. And I've started and bootstrapped several different companies since then. I've also invested in lots of different startups. And I'm writing a new book called The Unfair Advantage.
Yeah, and I've seen some highlights on Instagram the other day of the cover and the finished article. Is it your kind of beta versions that you've just received?
Yeah, so those are the mock-ups. And as an entrepreneur, one of the challenges that you always have is that you're always testing your ideas with the people around you, the closest people around you. And the best way to test your ideas are with your people who are potentially going to be your customers and the readers of your type of work that you do. So I try and get it out there in social media and so on as well. So there's a mock-up of the book. So it's just a learning through my entrepreneurship that, like, don't ask your mom or your dad if your book is good. You ask your customers and ask your users potentially. So that's why it's on Instagram and the mock-up's going around. I'm getting feedback on it and it's been great.
Yeah, very true. And there's kind of lesson one of today. And I'm glad you touched on that, because what I'd really love to get across in our conversation today, Ash, is, if ever there's been, someone I've met who's been a real serial entrepreneur, then I consider you for sure as one of those. And as you mentioned, you've worked with so many people. You mentor many clients now, entrepreneurs at different stages of their business. However, many of the Escape the Rat Race listeners will still be at that early stage, probably still juggling full-time employment, maybe having already cut down to 2 or 3 days a week, certainly in that transition stage. So it'd be really good today if you could share some of your insights with our listeners around some of the challenges at those first couple of years, whether it's mindset, fear that holds people back, and just really the whole validation of what's a good idea, what should you put your energy, your focus, and investing your time and money into, and kind of knowing, stacking the odds in your favor, and as you might say, the unfair advantage that's available to people out there. So I've thrown a lot at you there, but maybe we could sort of tackle some of those issues to begin with, Ash.
So I know the pain and the feeling of trying to start a company, and there's people around you who don't believe you, and there's people around you who are already in full-time jobs and working, and they don't really want to see you go down a different path, and they're scared for you and they have fear. And the challenge is, who do you listen to, and where do you go, and where your passions lie, and what's your heart saying, what's your mind saying? And there's always a battle between your heart and your mind when you want to start something new and you want to serve other people. I think the most important point to understand is that, why are you starting a company or a business in the first place? I hear people want to start a company or a business because they don't like their boss or they don't like the company they're in. And usually that's not always the right reason to start a company. And that's just an emotional reason for why they want to start a company or a business. What I always say to people is to consider, why are you starting a company for other people, your customers? Who are you going to serve? And you're starting a company or a business for them to solve a problem for them. And when you start off with that kind of element of thinking about starting a company, it feels like it's less of a risk when you realize there is a problem and you're solving it and you're making customers happy and they realizing that you're doing something of value for them. So rather than sitting there and saying, I don't like my boss and I don't like working 9 to 5, forget that, I just want to start a company. It's the wrong way to do it. I would stay in work and keep continuing to find a problem to solve. So that's the first thing, the biggest piece of advice I can give. You're starting a company not because of yourself, but you're starting it because of your customers and the people you're going to serve. And people around you are always going to say to you, don't do it. There's going to be lots of naysayers. Your family are just only trying to protect you. Your spouse is going to be nervous. Your partner is going to be nervous because they're also trying to protect you. Sometimes love is a strange thing where you kind of can limit you to do certain things, but at the same time you have to have this kind of ability to love someone enough to know that even if they fail in something, you still love them. And if you have that, then that's also a very powerful reason for starting something, and explaining that to your spouse or your partner and letting them know that you're going to start a company, so they understand that you're going to be away certain times. You're not going to be able to go to the cinema all the time or have dinner out all the time with friends. When they understand that, then they'll understand who you are, and it'll make it much easier for you to start a company rather than saying, oh, John's working away on an idea somewhere and he's not here at dinner again. Oh, no, not one of those weird ideas again. And it kind of labels you as a crackpot kind of thing. And it's not really the case. You're just, you're putting your passion and your energy into doing something. And the third thing, I suppose, is it's not always about passion. I mentioned passion about doing stuff, but it's not passions per se. You have to have a serious understanding of the market and have enough research done about your market conditions and what you're trying to achieve. Because the quickest way to leave 9 to 5 is to be able to not serve a customer because you're working, not because you need to look for a customer. And that's the quickest way to leave a 9 to 5. So And you can do that very easily outside of your 9-to-5 job. The amount of times I've watched Netflix, binged on Netflix and binged on Game of Thrones and all sorts of things, you can realize to yourself, actually, there's a lot of time in the day that you can do certain things. And we just need to make sure that we can utilize our time more. So hopefully that helps.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you touched on time there. I think that's something that I hear so often in the, just haven't got time. But you really find the time for the things that are most important, don't you? So we all have the same amount of hours. We hear this often, Richard Branson is a well-used example of, however many hundreds of companies he has. And so there's no excuse for someone who's just starting up to say, I don't have time to really put in as much as I'd like to into my business. Because if it really meant enough, and as you say, if you really were passionate and you really could see a problem that you knew you could solve, and it almost made it your mission to solve it, then the time would become available. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because when you assign a time slot for anything, you can fill it with whatever you feel like. And it's what's priority and what's important for you. And your business is only going to be important for you as a single person when you're first starting out, unless you've got a co-founding team. So you have to dictate your own time and your own priority. No longer have a boss. You have to be the boss, be the person doing it. You have to be everything. And people get nervous around that. And when you're working 9-to-5 in another company, I've worked in several companies before, and I know that when I was recruiting people or when I had an invoice to pay, I had an HR department, I had an accounts department. But now I have to understand all this myself. And the only way you're going to do that is if you get out there and start doing it yourself. You don't realize there's a lot more to a business than just doing the part of the business that you like the most. And so understanding that is very important, and getting to grips with that. So when you are in the world of work, for example, you're actually in a great position because you've got a job, you've got income coming in, and you can actually, in your company, you're going to have lots of different departments. If you want to start your company, you can learn from each one of the departments. Sit down with the accounts lady and find out, or the accounts person, and find out how accounts works. Sit down with the salespeople, sit down with the marketing people, go out for lunch with people. I used to do that all the time. I used to go out for lunch with senior people in my workplace to find out what they did and how it worked, to get more understanding of it, rather than just being pigeonholed in my own little department and focusing on what I was good at. So learning all the other aspects of business. So you can make time, and time you can make even at work. Even when you're working 9-to-5, you can go for lunch with somebody and learn something about applying it to your business. So you can and then coming home and doing something with that information is important. And knowing you have to tell the people around you that this is what you're doing. This is your goal, but own your inner circle. You don't want to go too far out. So they know what you're spending your time on, and you can request help. A lot of the people, will get stuck and say, how do other people do this? It's really difficult. It is difficult, but you got to seek help and ask for help. Because when you do that, then you have the opportunity to learn more, but also listen to podcasts like yourself, read your books, read other people's books, get an understanding of that. So educate yourself and get to know that. But you can do all of that in the 9-to-5 and get working on your business outside.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Let's talk about some of the practical steps then, Ash. So if someone spotted a problem, they've perhaps never run a business before, never launched a business. So what are some of the tips for someone to validate that idea, to actually get out there in front of their ideal customer as quickly as possible and without having to invest lots of money as well, so that you know that what your the path you've picked is giving you the most chance of success?
Sure. So I think the first part is always making sure you do your market research. The number of times I meet entrepreneurs and people who approach me with ideas to say that this is unique and an exclusive idea and not done their research around it, gobsmacks me. It's like, you need to do your research. You need to know what the market is like. You need to know what other competitors are doing this already. There's never an idea that's completely unique and brand new. If there is, then it's very, very risky. You want to do something that people can understand and relate to. And so you want to do your market research before you start to consider spending and investing more time in the business. And once you've done your market research, you need to go out to the market. There's a quote by Mike Tyson. You can plan all day long with strategies and so on, but you can plan all day long, but as soon as you get into the ring and get punched in the face, your plan is going to change very dramatically. And that quote was by Mike Tyson. I'm a bit of a boxing fan myself. So you can plan all day, but if you don't go out there in the marketplace and do something with it, you're not going to know how to duck and dive. You're not going to know how to throw your right punches and, slip and so on as well. So it's important that you do your planning, but get out there and do your market research, and get out there, but do your market research, because that's going to help you where to go in the first place. So imagine you've done your market research and you found a couple of competitors, you know what they're doing already, but you found a niche or a problem that you want to solve. You need to get out there to your customer face to face and speak to them, or on the phone. A lot of people will hide behind and say, I've sent out 100 emails or 50 emails. I'm like, that's not good enough. You need to just have you need to have what a lot of people now have, a lot of what I call soft touch points. They'll email somebody or social media, ping somebody on social media, but they won't go deeper and meet them in person. And they won't go to that next stage. And I think we hide behind our laptops sometimes, or we have the excuse of there's no time. How do I do it? I used to meet people and make phone calls during my lunch hours at work when I was working. You can do it. It's just up to you to decide if you can make that happen, right? And so it's the way you utilize your time and utilize what you're doing. So once you found a problem that you need to solve, get in front of the customer and get them to kind of validate your idea. But the validation, how does that happen, Chris? A lot of people ask me, so how do you know how to validate the idea? Well, ultimately, it's about them signing on a dotted line on a contract to do something for you. But then there's a next step to that. I'll have entrepreneurs that come and say, I've got 5 people interested. But so how many have transferred money into your bank account? How many have paid? Mm. And it's like, none. So they're not interested then. They're just saying that maybe, or have you got to close the deal? So close the deal, close the opportunity. There's so many tools out there to make it easy for you to do that. You can make an invoice very easily online. You can get them to transfer money to your bank very easily. It's very easy to do that, but that's going to give you full validation of the idea. So you think it is a problem, go out there, speak to the people you think are going to solve the problem. You can solve the problem for, and validate it. If you haven't validated it, then you need to understand, are you going to the right target market? Are they the right customer? And then ask them for referrals at that point. Say, actually, if it's not right for you, who do you think it's right for? You might have missed a segment of a customer that you don't know. So I think that's the kind of basic process of before you validate an idea.
Yeah. And so again, for someone who may be going through these steps for the first time, they've never launched a business before, would you suggest that they maybe try and sell or practice, shall we say, a lower cost item? So, they're not trying to sell £1,000 item or a £10,000 item, but just literally go and make your first $100 or £100. Just get used to selling and pitching. Is that something that people should get used to early on?
I think that's a great idea. I think it's great to be able to understand how to pitch and sell, because salesmanship is a very important skill set and a trait for an entrepreneur to have. You have to have the ability to go out there and sell your vision and sell your concepts and actually get in return value for it, which in this case is monetary value. And yes, you can start off with selling the cheaper items, or you can use the funnel technique where you get in the cheaper items and pushing them down into the funnel. But ultimately, I think it's you need to learn to sell before you even sell, in that sense, in front of a client. So and learn to negotiate and learn to be able to deal with rejection. I think that's the biggest issue, rather than selling itself, is the ability to deal with rejection. And I kind of test that in the early days with mentees sometimes. I sometimes ask them, if someone meets me in a coffee shop, for example, I'll test them and to see if they really, really are truly wanting to be an entrepreneur. And I'll say, I tell you what, could you negotiate a discount on the coffee we just had in a coffee shop? And the first reaction would be, obviously you can't get a discount in a coffee shop. It's a set price, right? Yeah. But what I'm looking for is the reaction. I'm looking for if they get up and go for it. I'm looking for if they look at me and go, oh, not really. I'm looking to see if they're feeling awkward about it. And that awkwardness and that feeling of awkwardness, like, she's asking me to do this. It's really awkward. If you can't get up at that point and do it, how are you going to do your business? How are you going to sell in your business? Because you're going to get all these awkward moments in your life. So I've had people get up and go there and ask for a discount. And they've said no. And they sat back down, which is fine. That is absolutely fine, because you've had the ability to ask. You've just not had the ability to negotiate that. And then I've gone up there and I've tried to negotiate it in a different way. And I've obviously won in this case because I know the person who's running the coffee shop. So it's easy for me to win. I have an unfair advantage. I know the person, right? I have a trust and relationship there already. But from that one learning, I can teach them to say, look, it's going to be awkward. It's going to be so awkward. And so I try and put them in an awkward situation, which is low-key awkward, to say, yeah, it's going to be challenging. And this is how it's going to be like in sales, or it's how it's going to be with clients. Are you going to be okay with dealing with that and get them used to that kind of environment?
Yeah. You mentioned the word unfair advantage there, Ash. So let's move into a little bit about the forthcoming book, because I'm really keen to hear more about that And I know that you've got a structure, which you talk about in the book as well, which I think would be really useful if you wouldn't mind sharing that for our listeners.
Sure. When I first started out the reason why I'm writing this book is because when I first started out in doing startups and businesses, I was always wondering, why are other people more successful in certain businesses and companies, and how come they can do it and why can't I do it? And I always wondered, and I always looked at myself and I scratched my head and thinking, and then I went away and researched lots of different people, Evan Spiegel, Mark Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and I looked at them and I read their stories, and I was like, I still wasn't getting it until I went a bit more deeper to understand the truth behind it. Because journalism and books don't always say the truth. They always just tell you the facts in a way that might be appropriate for whatever they're trying to sell or say. But when you get to the truth of a lot of these things, I realized that all these people were very self-aware of themselves to know that they had this one thing. And that one thing, I call it the unfair advantage. It's like a personal edge. It's something that's unique about them, that's not copyable or something that someone else can get very easily. It's the part of their DNA, effectively. And so I came up with the concept of unfair advantage being your personal edge, or something that's unique about you in the environment or the idea that you want to succeed in. So let's give you an example. Say you want to be a basketball player and you want to be with the NBA. It's very unlikely that if you're 5'5", that you're going to make the NBA and you're living in London. But a lot of people say, oh, it's okay, live your dreams, be positive, you can do it. But it's very unlikely because you don't have an unfair advantage towards that. You can be the best dribbler in the world, but you're probably not going to be, the odds are stacked against you. But if you're 6'7" and you trained with the local team and you got dribbling skills and so on, you're much more likely a chance of getting into NBA, because height is a very important aspect of being a basketball player. And so knowing this is very important. Knowing what you go for and the goals that you want to achieve is very important. And that's when you can apply your unfair advantage. Sometimes we don't realize that we have strengths in other areas, but we always go with the weaknesses and we don't want to try and prove people wrong. And so I came up with this framework called the Miles framework. I think people make miles of excuses for not succeeding. And the Miles framework actually came about that. And I was like, how does the Miles framework work? So MILES, they all stand for something in the framework. And the first one is money. The second one is intelligence, then location and luck, then education and expertise, and then status. And I give examples of where within each one of these in the framework, how it can affect you. For example, your location, where you're based, makes a massive difference to your success opportunity. And just moving to the right location can enable that. You can't rely on the government to fund your local region to, make startups really popular there. You need to move to where it's going to be popular, unfortunately, and that is the case that we're living in. For example, intelligence. People think intelligence is important. People say you have to be really smart. You do, but it's actually emotional intelligence, the ability to work in a team, that is much more important in the world of entrepreneurship. And then your education expertise. I don't have a degree, but I'm still able to converse and connect and work with people with degrees and MBAs and understand the commercial world. And actually, a lot of your degrees made redundant by the time you hit the workplace. And people go to universities right now and buy degrees effectively as a commodity to put it on their CV to get a job. And as an entrepreneur, you don't need that. You need to have expertise. You need to have the ability to understand your sector and your deeper knowledge of what you're trying to do and experience in that sector. And then money. Some people say, I haven't got the money. Well, I never had any money. And that made me really, really hungry to do something and prove something. But even if you got money, you might want to have the ability to prove people that actually don't need your parents' money. You can still do it. So there's a double-edged sword aspect to the Miles framework. And then the final one is status. The clothes you wear, the car you have, the watch you wear, your accent, where you live, what school you went to. All this makes a difference in how you approach the world and your outset. So the Miles framework is like effectively a lens which you can look through to see how other people are successful, but also apply to yourself to work from your own strengths and understand that everybody is unique and special, and we all are unique and special, but what are we special at and what are we unique with?
That's fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing that. And you touched on money there. And often, I found even in my own experience in the past that when you sometimes have a buffer and you have some money, you get more comfortable. And that is not a good thing necessarily. I had a great quote from one of our early guests, Jackie Holmes, on the podcast, who said, "Comfort is the enemy of success." And that really stuck with me, because we all know that as entrepreneurs, you have to step outside of your comfort zone. on a daily basis almost, and get that resilience. And without that, it's going to be a tough ride.
Absolutely, you're spot on. That's why I do the coffee negotiation test. It's very awkward. It's stepping outside of your comfort zone and doing something which is very, very unusual. And you're right. Money is, as a marketing director, for example, the most important thing for most people is to get a big budget. But what I found was that when I had the least amount of budget, that's when I became more creative, because I had to use my resources more effectively. And it made me become more creative in what I was trying to do, because I didn't have access to the budgets. So in certain areas, less money can help you become more creative, rather than having more money and just throwing money at a billboard or something which that's not going to work, but you just do it anyway because that's what everybody else says you should do. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in that sense. But money also helps as well to scale your company. We had 10.5 million. We got to do our TV ads and so on. So it's understanding where you want to scale the opportunity. Hi, my name is Ash Ali, and you're listening to Escape the Rat Race Radio.
We have to really talk about, your background with Just Eat, because that was obviously such a phenomenal success and sounds like a real whirlwind ride there, which ended up, of course, with the UK's largest tech company flotation in the last 10 years, 1.5 billion. So do you mind sharing a little bit about just your time there and some of the lessons learned which led up to that point?
Sure. I mean, it was a wonderful experience. I was the first marketing director there. So my job was to get more people to order takeaway on the internet. It was 2007 and the iPhone was just being released. So there was no mobile app in those days. It was just literally a desktop. It was a red and yellow website and it was not very good looking, but that was what I was given. And that's what we were working with to get more customers to order takeaway on the internet. So growing this marketplace. But actually what I found out when I was there, that we had to be very strategic in our growth. As a marketplace, it's kind of a chicken and egg. We needed takeaways on one side and customers on the other side, but we still needed to make sure that we had enough takeaways for the customers to be able to be satisfied with our product. And so in the early days, what I realized was that we had to work very strategically in terms of pacing ourselves across the UK, city by city, town by town, rather than going after every person in the whole of the UK. So an example of that would be, there's no point marketing a product and advertising it online nationally when you only got takeaways in London, Manchester, and Birmingham. There's going to be loads of pockets of areas which you haven't got takeaways in. Then at the same time, even then, creating satisfaction with the product was more important because, it's easy to market a product and go out there and spend money to get people to a website. But I wanted to make sure people were satisfied. So my first point of call was to actually make sure people were satisfied when you got to the website. So if you got to our website and Just Eat and you put in your postcode and it was NW9, say, for example, where I'm here today, and you only found 2 Indian takeaways and 1 pizza place, you'd be really disappointed. You'd be like, they haven't got everything on this platform. And I've lost my opportunity. So I've spent money now getting that customer to that website. And they're like, it's not a very good website. 1 star, right? So what we decided to do was to make sure that we had what we call liquidity in the marketplace. And we had 3 of each cuisine type in each postcode as a minimum before we started to market it. So we had 3 Indians, 3 Chinese, 3 Thai, 3 pizza places, 3 kebab places. So then once we had that right customer satisfaction level in terms of choice, we went out and fully marketed it in that area. And i.e. put all our penetration towards that and put more energy behind it and more money behind it because we knew the customer would get satisfaction from it. So that's the first thing, making sure your product is right and people are satisfied with it and it works before you go out and start promoting it everywhere. And then we did loads of cool things. We utilized them. A lot of people are looking for marketing hacks and there's no such thing as a marketing hack. But, one of the first things that we realized was that we needed takeaway customers. And there were so many searches that were being done online. We needed to make sure we were number 1 for everything in terms of the search engines. So I made sure that happened. And I had an unfair advantage towards that because myself and one of the other founders of the company, he was an SEO person and I was an SEO person. So straight away, we developed a website that was in line with making sure that it ranked really highly for people searching for local terms around the cuisine types. And we ranked very highly for that. And we made sure we were number 1 for everything. In that area. So Indian takeaway, London, Indian takeaway, West London, Indian takeaway, NW19, whatever it was, the variations of that. So we got the basics right. So if someone was online, they found us. Now we had to make sure when they did find us that we had enough restaurants or takeaways in that area to be able to serve them. And so we used a lot of data points around that. Even if we ranked number one for takeaways in Bristol and we never had enough takeaways, that became a data point for our salespeople to go and find more takeaways and restaurants in Bristol because we've got customers coming from there. So it was kind of a demand and supply analysis that we did together before we marketed the product. And then we also knew that we wanted to make this big. So we wanted to get above the line marketing. So advertising outdoor. And the easiest way to do that was to use our restaurants that we already had on our database. So we put stickers up everywhere on our takeaways and restaurants. And in the early days, over 50% of people who found out about Just Eat found out about us from those stickers on a restaurant window. So there's a tech company doing everything technology-based, but we're using outdoor and stickers on windows to get more people to come to our website. And we had a lot of people who found out about us from that method. So there's lots of little kind of tricks in the trade. So sometimes there's a lot of noise in the marketplace. But if you have a lot of wisdom and experience in marketing, you come back to the basics and get the basics right and realize that actually it's right in front of your own eyes. We can use our own assets to be able to promote ourselves and then go out there and start spending and investing money into other types of marketing and advertising. That's how we kind of started.
Yeah, I love that story. And I remember some of those points when you shared that back at the Entrepreneur Academy event earlier this year. And the one thing that really stuck from your presentation there was when you said about don't just try and do this alone. And you've touched on this several times in our conversation today, is about the team. So just before we wrap up the conversation today, because the time has just flown and, I feel like we almost have got a part two in us, Ash. So
I'm happy to come next year again before the book launches. I'm happy to come again, Chris.
Maybe in the new year we'll sort that out. But, just to wrap, before we wrap things up, Ash, you talk about the team. So for someone who is, trying to do this by themselves, I often talk about tests such as wealth dynamics, other psychometric tests, because some of us are creative people. Some are really good at just building the team and connecting with others. Others are great at service and timing. And some people are a little bit more introvert, and they're the people who love to sit behind the screen and analyze the numbers and the spreadsheets and all that stuff. So do you have anything to add in terms of someone getting clear about where their skill sits and then, how to go about finding the right team members?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the biggest challenges, hiring the right people and getting the right kind of founding team together for a project or a product or a service. And the first thing to that is, you're right. You got to know thyself. You have to figure yourself out. You got to know who you are. And to do that, there's lots of different psychometric tests you can do. And there's lots of different ways to find that out. And when you're at work at 9 to 5, you get pigeonholed to doing certain things. And my advice is that you try and do more projects, do more things. When you're at work, use this opportunity, because you're not going to go back into work after you want to become an entrepreneur. So use that opportunity and use that platform to learn from different people in the organization, because ultimately you might even walk away with potential co-founders and employees, strangely enough, for people you worked with. And as a investor, I like to have people who worked together before, because I know how hard it is to start a company. And I know the pain. And you need people to be able to support each other and work together and understand how they work and have the right synergy of working together. So knowing yourself is very important, and understanding that even if you're at 9 to 5, that's an opportunity for you to find the right people to work with down the line as well. So there's opportunities everywhere. And I've met people that I've worked with before and crossed over with people and worked with people from organizations that I worked with before. So that's the first thing. So know thyself, get to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. Get to know your weaknesses, and understand that we're not going to be good at everything. And, and also understand that, when you do an IQ test or when you do one of these psychometric tests, it's taking a snapshot of how you are at that time. I advise people to have an initial understanding of progress, to see how you feel, how you change over every 2 years, 3 years. So when you do these psychometrics, do them every 2-3 years, because everyone's changing. Your wisdom, your intelligence, everything can move and change. Your contacts, your networks can move and change. And ultimately, I think it's defining your personal unfair advantage to what you're trying to achieve and do, whatever your dream is if it's starting a company in recruitment and you've got recruitment experience and you've got a bit of an unfair advantage. But if you're going into recruitment and never done it before, then you're already starting from a standing still perspective. And hiring someone to get you to 1 at that point might not be the right thing. You need to get to 1 yourself. Because once you get to one, then you know if you want to carry on doing this one thing, and you got to believe in yourself. And when you believe in yourself and have confidence in yourself and understand that you have an unfair advantage to achieving success at this, you can then convince other people and sell your vision to other people to join you and come on board and develop the idea and the business to go to the next step. And that is kind of the ultimate place to be. Once you know who you are, you know who you're looking for, and then you find the team based on your vision for what you're trying to achieve. You've already got yourself from 0 to 1. Don't expect someone else to come in and get you to 0 to 1. You have to do that yourself. And if you can't do it, start a different company, start a different business, because that's not right for you. You haven't got the passion or the resilience or the grit to get through that. That's because it's not right for you. You're just not going to do it. No one else is going to come and help you. This is your thing, your game. You're the master of your destiny when it comes to your business in this sense. There is a lot of element about timing and luck, which I talk about in my book. But ultimately, in terms of your vision and convincing other people, you got to have the belief in yourself, self-belief in yourself, and the confidence to be able to tell other people about your idea in an eloquent and elegant fashion to convince them to join you. And whatever you're looking for, then you can know where the jigsaw puzzle will fit with what your weaknesses are and what you're looking for, and then ideally fix them into what you're trying to achieve.
Well, I don't know about everyone listening, but I feel after that rousing ending there, ready to just go out there and take on the world. So, thank you.
I'm really proud that that is the case, because, you know, I was there as well, guys. I've been there myself, and I've really felt the pain. And, you know, at work, when you do these like personal development plans and the manager comes up to you and goes, "Oh, you're not good at this, you're not good at that." And, you know, it's like always going to be the negatives, but you got to take the positives, and you know what you're going to be good at. And you have to be able to, one of the other ways that I also used to find out what I'm good at was to not just test myself, because I think sometimes we're dishonest with ourselves. You know, when we do a personality question or survey, how do you take that bias away of saying, yeah, I'm an extrovert, or I love being the center of the party, you know, whatever it is that they ask you, right? You can ask people who are close by to you. So I actually, and a way to probably do this is to write down 6 or 7 questions that you want to know about yourself. Send them to 6 or 7 people that you know in your network who really know you, you work with, who know you, and tell them to fill it in. You can do this on a Google form, because the external factor of them knowing you is going to give you a completely different perspective of what you really like. And then your internal factor and matching it up, because you might think that actually, yeah, I'm really, you know, I don't really do much for that person. And, you know, it's like, yeah, it's good. But really they might think you're the smartest, most brilliant person at Excel spreadsheet, and I loved how you helped them with whatever. And you're like, oh, really? So there's an aspect of this, and I have this myself. You know, when I've helped people, it's like, yeah, I just told them how to do this marketing thing, and I'm like, and then a few years later, but Ash, that was the best thing ever in the world. You solved that problem for me, and I really enjoyed. I was like, oh, really? I thought it was like not much of an issue, right? Is that right for me? It was like second nature, right? Because when you work from your strength and you work from your flow, and when you're in your flow and when you're in that zone, that is your thing. Yeah. No one can touch you. Nobody can touch you. And once you get to that point, you need to know when you get into flow. When you have flow, when is that point? And I'm knowing myself more and more, know when I'm in the flow, like I'm right now. I'm in the flow, and I'm just going, and all my mind's going, and I'm connecting all the dots, and people can't see these dots and the vision behind it. But when you're there, you will know, because time will fly by so fast. Once you get to know what that is, then you can see what your strengths are and actually what you enjoy doing, because ultimately it's about enjoying your time and doing something that you choose to be an entrepreneur, and you choose to do something that you want to be more in flow with. There's going to be activities you don't like, invoicing and chasing clients and stuff, and you can outsource that. There's loads of things to outsource. Nowadays, you can outsource that. You can run a business from anywhere nowadays with, personal assistants and VAs working for you left, right, center. So don't get scared. Believe in yourself. Know where your flow is.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's amazing. I'd invite anyone listening to share some of those highlights, some of those awareness in the Escape the Rat Race Facebook group. We have over 1,000 members there who are chatting, sharing ideas every day. So don't be shy, just put something out there, and I'm sure everyone will be, more than willing to help. And as you say, Ash, go out to those that know you best. And often when we're in our flow, we don't even realize it. So our genius is just, something that we think comes easy to everyone, but actually it doesn't. It's something that's special and unique to us.
Absolutely. And it's really hard to define because you're not going to find that at school and university most times. If you do, you're very, very lucky. You usually find it when you get out into the real world and, oh, okay, this is different. But ultimately find out who you are as a person. And you need to discover your unfair advantages. You need to discover those. Once you know that, it gives you a sense of confidence. It gives you a sense of self-relief. You know, guys, I've been there. I've been in places where people have said that, you know, I'm not good at this or I'm great at that. And, you know, for example, creativity is something you can't get a mark for in school unless you do art. And I wasn't very good at art, but I'm very creative. What does that tell you? Yeah. You know, there's just because you get graded on something doesn't mean that's what you're good at. No, and you know, it's like, so it's very important to have that ability to know what you spike at. What's your spike in terms of if you have a graph and you spike at something which is really, really good. In fact, when you look at the best CEOs, they spike at certain things. They have very good talents, you know, high talents. I've worked with lots of different CEOs. And also, the reason why I say find your unfair advantage, because the book and life as an entrepreneur is very difficult. You're trying to raise money, you're trying to support your family properly, you're trying to make a living. But whatever your gender is, whatever your race, whatever your background, you can still go out there and be successful if you know your unfair advantage. If you know how to relish and use your story and who you are as a person to give you the fire and ability to achieve success. And that's what the Unfair Advantage book is about, to understand, get that fire and ability because you've got it already. You want to move. But remember, you don't want to leave your job because you don't like your boss. You want to leave a job because there's customers out there for your product or service. And you've got a fire in your belly to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anyone listening, Ash, who would love to get their hands on the Unfair Advantage, I know it's not out until the new year. Is there anywhere they can go right now to learn a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we have an early interest list at theunfairadvantage.co.uk. You can leave your email, name and email address, and we will send you lots of information and for the official launch dates, the book tour. And also, I'm going to be giving away in January the first chapter, an introduction for free as well as an ebook, so you can read through it and get really excited about what's coming up next in the full version of the book.
Wow, fantastic. And if anyone wants to connect with you, Ash, are you on social media, LinkedIn? Where's the best place?
Yep. So on Twitter, I'm Ash_Ali, and LinkedIn, Ash Ali. Just search for me, you'll find me there. And Facebook, I'm on Facebook, but I use LinkedIn more and Twitter as well. You can find me there. And Instagram, of course, if you want to see pictures of me traveling around the world and doing some funny stuff, then. But mainly I'm at LinkedIn if you're on a professional capacity. Yeah.
Fantastic. Ash, you've squeezed so much into a short space of time today. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I know that everyone listening will have got so much out of that. And hey, let's carry on the conversation again early in the new year when the book is launched.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Ash.
I look forward to speaking to everyone again in the new year. Thank you very much.
Well, I really hope that you found that conversation between Ash and myself both insightful and packed full of useful advice to help you with your own business. And if you're still fully rooted in a full-time job, searching for the right path that can lead to more freedom, then perhaps you have been inspired today to take that first step and to begin the process of inexpensive testing to validate some of those ideas which may have been sitting dormant in your mind for far too long without taking action upon them. After all, what use is an idea until you act upon it? Now, before I leave you today, I just wanted to thank you for tuning in, and I wanted to let you know that Escape the Rat Race Radio will now be coming to you weekly from January 2018. Now, I'll still be searching for the same level of inspiring and successful entrepreneurs to bring to you, but I'll also be hanging out and getting to learn more about our core members who have either recently made the jump from employment to business owner, or members who have simply taken a massive decision that enough is enough and have picked a lane and are celebrating their first wins, be that products sold, first clients won, or breakthroughs in their own mindset, which can help to inspire you to be bold and follow your dreams towards the lifestyle that you would like to be leading without the daily commute or answering to somebody else doing uninspiring work every day. Now, your first step, if you're not already a member, is to head on over to www.etrr.online/Facebook and join our private Facebook group where you can connect with over 1,000 other escapees sharing ideas with one another every single day. On next week's episode, I have former world champion runner and Olympic medalist turned entrepreneur Chris Akabusi to share an abundance of motivation and encouragement for you in your quest to escape the 9 to 5. Until then, see ya.